grows up to be somebody that just loves to learn. Another child grows up to be somebody you just love to burn. Mom loves both of them. You see, it's in the blood. Both kids are good to mom, but it's thicker than the mud. It's a family affair.
It's a family affair.
I always forget the audio fade out when I'm making these videos, Charles. I apologize.
That's quite all right. That's quite all right.
It's a family affair for the Clintons, the Bushes, the Obamas. They're getting everybody in on the action.
It goes way, way back. And once again, now we have the art department on, firing on all cylinders. We now have the video and audio department and the still photography department. It's just impressive.
Unbelievable what one person can do on minimal budget. But this was of course your suggestion as usual, and very good choice of topic. Charles, a lot of people consider you and I conspiracy theorists for merely utilizing the term deep state. They don't believe that that's an actual thing. But of course, we now have former Congressman Jason Chaffetz coming out and saying it. It seems quite clear that it is real. Absolutely.
We'll be talking at length today about the New York Times anonymous supposed op-ed piece. Since when is it possible in the New York Times to have anonymous opinion pieces on the editorial pages? I mean, that's like having a fake name on Twitter and just bleeding something out, and you happen to have 1 million followers, so it starts trending. I mean,
right.
It's really shocking, frankly, that the editorial board, and I don't know how many people are on the editorial board, would have reached the conclusion that that's an appropriate use of the famous New York Times reputation and standing in the global corporate media world. I mean, really, it's yet coming on the heels of Jason Blair and these other fake stories that have been in the New York Times. Something else.
Well, so many of their actual known journalists are just busy having sex with the sources, so I guess they didn't put their name on the article. But I agree with you, it's absolutely shameful. The New York Times is now down in the mud with 4chan, and I mean, let's face it, I've been calling BuzzFeed the Filene's basement for the New York Times, but really New York Times is kind of like the big, overgrown, aged out older brother of BuzzFeed. They're both crap.
I mean, I actually have been into this store once by chance because I was looking for a pen, and I went into Jack's 99-cent store here in next to Mason.
Yeah, you can get Windex and paper towels there.
You get frozen dinners for 10 cents or something.
I'm
not sure I do that.
Well, with that, Charles, we should get into our usual stuff. I definitely want people who aren't currently following you on Twitter to be aware your shadow ban has been lifted, but the growth of the following is not in line with what we've normally seen. Of course, you're at Charles Ortel. Charles, what do you think about the congressional hearings, about social media this week, and the various goings on as far as your Twitter account, the Crowdsource the Truth YouTube presence? There's been a lot of weird things going on.
Yeah, and we'll be having some links on that in the body of the presentation, but the first comment is just that I was out and about a fair amount in the media last week, and ordinarily the Twitter following grows, certainly by many more than 100 a week, and this time is down. It actually seems to be more or less stuck at 31.7. It was slightly above it, like 68. Now it's 48, and that just doesn't make sense in light, to me anyway, in light of the recent exposure one piece I've written has gotten, and the various appearances that I've done. I was shadow banned a week ago. I mean, longer than that, but a week ago when we were on together.
Yeah, we were checking it.
And then just before Dorsey testified, Scruffy Face testified, I'm sorry if that offends you, Scruffy Face, but just before he testified, you and I and many others, I think, were no longer shadow banned, but still our traffic is not growing, and I'm wondering if that we weren't shadow banned or removed from shadow banning because they found, you know, a double plus secret extra special way to shadow ban you that's not called shadow banning.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because you said it last week and it just sort of bounced off the top of my head and didn't really sink in. But now it is, because there is a brother team that we're aware of that we don't need to discuss that is frequently telegraphing, or I should say making videos that are thematically linked to stuff that is happening or will happen. For instance, one of these guys put out a video claiming that I was buying users on YouTube and buying subscribers, and the other put out, or has put out, a series of videos claiming that I'm using fake accounts to somehow diminish their YouTube presence. And I've certainly never done that. I don't have time to waste on that. I'm focused on building Crowdsource the Truth and directing people to patreon.com/crowdsource the truth, where we're growing really rapidly and having a lot of exclusive programming. But in the typical Saul Alinsky fashion, and also dovetailing off what you're saying with some other method of doing sinister stuff that maybe we're not aware of. I mean, these guys aren't totally dumb. They are able to adapt and change their tactics. And I've noticed that early thumbs down on videos, like before there's any views, there'll be 9 thumbs down, 12 thumbs down. You and I did a video with Fabian Chalandon that experienced 1,100 thumbs down, and we've had online admissions of people buying these down votes. One of these brothers I'm talking about even showed us a website where you can buy subscribers and down votes and all that. And so I feel like, and they even commented that there's been less views on Crowdsource the Truth videos lately, which is true. And I feel like it's the same high quality level of guests and information that you're bringing. So perhaps people who enjoy Crowdsource the Truth should be hitting the thumbs up button more, because the thumbs down, what that does is, I believe it prevents the video from getting taken up into the search capabilities of YouTube and suppresses the reach of the videos. So it's yet another sinister way, not quite shadow banning, but manipulating of views that hopefully we can get around and not have to deal with anymore.
Great. Well, maybe we should, if we can, jump right into the old slides, because what we're trying to do, we should mention that today we're doing this early for a variety of reasons. We're sensitive to some viewers are busy this evening here in New York and elsewhere.
Our Jewish friends will be celebrating Rosh Hashanah.
And we are delighted. We're going to have a special report, frontline report, from a returning special guest, Biljana Martinovsky. We're going to try to dial that in at 3:30 p.m. It's now 2:10.
Yes.
And what we're covering today is this whole idea, which is more than just an idea, that Donald Trump and Mike Flynn and others, many others, named and unnamed, the silent, once deemed deplorable majority of this country, rose up unexpectedly on November 8th, 2016, to attempt to break the back of the deep state. And the deep state doesn't like that very much. So they've been fighting ever since then, if not arguably before then, against this possibility that's becoming a reality. And what we're seeing is that with each passing day, each passing week and month, Donald Trump's lukewarm supporters are becoming ever more convinced that he's delivering on results, unlike prior politicians or many politicians who just gab away and don't actually produce much. He's producing every day. People who were already his supporters are more and more encouraged, and people who are, the die-hard resistors, they're trying to mount battle after battle, and they're coming across more lame with each passing day. I mean, we'll get into that in some depth.
I think desperate is potentially a more accurate description of how they're coming across, in my view at least.
Right. I mean, we have the long American tradition has been, and traditions can be broken for good reason, but the long American tradition has been the departing president leaves. Harry Truman got in his car, supposedly, and drove back out to Missouri with no job, no nothing, and eventually got a job. And you shut the F up for a while, and you let the new president, find his feet. And put the cabinet together and run the country. That has been the tradition. And for all the talk of supposedly by Barack Obama recently that it's Donald Trump who's sowing division and Donald Trump who's trash talking, I view what Barack Obama did on Friday in the hospitable climate for him of Urbana, Illinois, the University of Illinois Champaign campus. Then the next day, and of all places, at Disneyland on a dais with 7 Democratic candidates, including one who is accused of sexual misconduct.
Right.
You know, I think Barack Obama's doing one heck of a lot of trash talking already. And the interesting metrics that I look at, on the one hand, you know, when Barack Obama was out there in Berlin, you know, promising that he would end global warming and the oceans would recede, and then when he got to Denver and he said, "We are the change we've been waiting for," you know, people back then were delirious. It was actually a very significant moment in American history, his election. But then he would get, you know, gigantic crowds.
Yeah.
The report is that in Anaheim, you know, which is not, it's not like it's tough to get to Anaheim, California. I mean, there's a few things over there. A lot of people show up in Anaheim. There could be a decent crowd. Suppose he got 750 people.
That's really bad. I think a college band could have 750 people. Was this just me, Charles, or was he doing shtick? I felt like he was like channeling Chris Rock or Jerry Seinfeld or something.
It was, yeah, he hadn't remembered his lines entirely, and his delivery was off, and maybe it was the time change or something, but I mean, it was just not impressive.
It was worse than that.
So if we could possibly return to the slide.
Right.
We're on a project now to drain the swamp, and the swamp doesn't like it. The swamp's getting hungry, and the swamp is trying to eat the enemy, but we'll wait and see. I mean, the swamp is powerful. It depends how far back you want to go when you challenge the swamp. You know, bad things can happen. But this has been a campaign, a short campaign from the standpoint of Donald Trump's official announcement through his victory. But he's put a lot of energy into this. Each week there are successes. And I would not bet against him draining the swamp at this point.
Yeah.
So with that, if we could go to the second. This is, again, for our new viewers, and I think you do have a growing suite of subscribers on your various channels.
Yes.
And some of the new viewers may not understand exactly, particularly if you're outside this country, that here in America, Jason and I and all Americans and all visitors to America have a First Amendment right to express our viewpoint, which is only somewhat modified. We can't incite violence. We can't use this channel to start committing crimes right and left, but we can express our viewpoints, which is what we do. And unlike other media forums, I mean, first of all, you, Jason, and I, Charles, we use our actual real names. I mean, I've got a passport I can show somebody if you don't believe it's me. But
look, just like
I even have, I hate to bring it up, but I even have a birth certificate I could show you, and it's real.
I want to evaluate it to see if it's been forged, Charles.
It's not been forged, I can tell you that. But so we have a First Amendment right to express our views, and unlike the failing New York Times and unlike corporate-owned media, what we do is we try to make it easy for you. We provide the source materials, both the primary and the secondary and other sources that we have. We provide links to you. Typically, Jason is able to get the slide version up and running for you. We do have today only 10 slides that we're going to do, but our colleague in Sweden has more than that. They're not the same format. They're pictures with one sentence, so it won't be as necessarily overwhelming that she has another 25 slides. But she's a wonderful person. I won't embarrass her when we have her on the air, but she's a brilliant PhD who was attacked viciously, physically attacked in Sweden, and then set about trying to expose her attackers and bring them to justice, and for doing that, the Swedish state turned on her and not only refused to give her justice, but then a group of people in league with the current Swedish state caused her to be removed from her job.
It's really terrible.
And it's a horrible, horrible thing. You know, as they say, as Barack Obama, the one thing I do agree with, or there's several things I agree with him, but one thing in particular when he says, these are not our values, these are not human values, that a female would be attacked viciously. And then for reporting that to the state would say, well, okay, you know, we don't want it to get out that there are these kind of vicious attackers here. We're just going to fire you and shut you up.
Right.
I mean, that's outrageous stuff. So she'll be joining us at 3:30 p.m. We don't necessarily need to go to my site. People have been there before, but Jason, should we not hit yours?
Well, what we should do is we should certainly check out the playlist, which is a useful resource for people. They can view all of the Sunday with Charles episodes in this one handy location. It's on the original Crowdsource the Truth YouTube channel, which of course is the Jason Goodman channel. And you know, Charles, someone in one of the various forums where I receive messages had requested the Fraudster Island video image be put on a mug at redbubble.com. So I've put it there, and I forgot to write back to that person and was having a difficult time finding their email address. But if they're watching right now, those graphics are available on redbubble.com along with so many of these, and people can come here and watch the 102 videos that you and I have made on the topic of Clinton Foundation fraud and unregulated globalism in general.
Yeah, I mean, are you Indian? And this is like Bollywood production level.
Exactly.
Bollywood, don't they produce like one a week or something like that?
Something like that. It's quite a prolific output from Bollywood for sure.
Well, let's just take a quick second on that. The reason we're doing this way, in particular for the new viewers, is that this is a deep topic, and the Clintons have been able, and those who enable these frauds have been able to get away with this gigantic collection of frauds because it's so big that the normal person, particularly somebody who does not have comfort looking at numbers and analyzing financial statements, just recoils and says, you know, for this to be a fraud, there would have to be so many things wrong with it. And he's the former president, and he got away with it. You walk your way down this tunnel of denial where you say, oh, I mean, you know, I know there's some bad things about him, but chances are, you know, it's not really a fraud. This is to rebut those people. And we've been doing this now for over a year, week in, week out, sometimes twice a week, sometimes even more than twice a week. And we've been trying to take different slants on it. So if you don't think it's a fraud for this reason, well, let's look at it that way. And then let's look at it this way. And we've been trying to also reach out. There's so many foreign governments, state governments, corporations, individuals affected by and participated in, sadly, this fraud, that we also wanted to, you know, reach out that way. And what we're hoping, we're seeing it actually, in that view list count, you said it's 11,941. That's I think, almost 1,000 higher than it was a week ago. So it means a lot more people, 100 higher, I'm sorry. That means, you know, that people are beginning to not only look at each video, but then to say, you know, I like what I saw, why don't I go further back?
Right.
And I think the prosecutors, the investigators around the world, we're hoping that for you, this is saving you a lot of time.
That's the idea.
That's the basic idea.
Yeah.
So thank you for giving me this platform to spend so many hours on this issue in such an elegant way.
Well, Charles, it's my pleasure.
So what we're trying to do, again, this was a viewer suggestion, you see. Some viewers come up with things and we try to listen and answer. We're trying to give you from this video 8 key themes here. Basically, the deep state certainly has been revealed. And I would argue it's reeling and it's reacting and it's trying to counterpunch. When we think about this op-ed going in under no name going into the New York Times, I mean, the reaction I immediately had was, so there is a deep state, and the New York Times is confirming it for us, right? I mean, it was, when you look at the text of the supposed op-ed, it's sloppy, it's clumsy, and you have various people speculating as to who could have done this. Now, this is a lengthy piece in the, who owns the
Washington Compost, Jeff Bezos.
And does he have a $600 million a year contract with the CIA?
He did, but it's now gone to Oracle, which is owned by Larry Ellison. So maybe, you know, that's like me giving you $5 and you giving me back 10 or something like that.
But anyway, so this is an article speculating that it's Jared. I doubt it was Jared Kushner. And the reason I say that is, I mean, you'd have to, I mean, to take on your father-in-law when, and you know, the grandfather of your children, and your wife, in a fight between Jared Kushner and Donald Trump, Ivanka is not going to side with Jared Kushner, that's for sure.
Well,
and
that's
so,
always hard to say.
No, I just don't believe it for a second.
But Jared Kushner seems to like Donald Trump.
Well,
He's
I know.
put him in this position and tons of money. And
But I put this up here not because I want to give more publicity to the Washington Post. And you know, they're advertising, you know, how the motto of the thing: democracy dies in darkness. So this means we operate in darkness,
Right.
or in complete ignorance,
just take the newspaper and wrap it around your eyes like a blindfold.
the way our editors do.
Exactly.
But anyway.
It's worth mentioning that this is the newspaper that Bob Woodward has been employed by for decades.
And others, yeah. Actually, that would be an interesting thing. For those of you who have trouble going to sleep, Crowdsource the Truth could do democracy dies in darkness, you know.
Sleep mask.
Sleep mask.
That's a great idea. You mount to people with the Washington Post logo on there.
But on the subject of who might have done it, I think it's more likely that it's a self-aggrandizing, you know, senior staffer. I think, you know, Gary Cohn, or nobody.
Well, I think it's Brennan.
Or Brennan. All right. Okay. Well,
I mean, it can't be nobody. The words don't appear on the page through magic. Someone wrote it. But the notion that it's come from someone within Trump's staff, that idea in and of itself is just meant to foment discord all over the place, which is what these guys love to do. And the body of that op-ed, it's talking about Skripal getting poisoned in the UK. No evidence that that was Russia that did that. It's just like, it's reinforcing all of these stupid deep state memes that have come up.
Right. Well, shame on the New York Times for publishing this sort of thing without identifying. You should say, look, if you want to write an opinion piece, we have to know who's writing it, you know? It's absurd.
It's not the same as keeping a journalistic source secret.
Not at all.
If someone went to a writer at the New York Times and said, hey, there's a cabal of 5 people in the cabinet who are working against Trump, there's my info, don't tell me anything, that becomes a source you need to protect and go investigate that. But just publish the person's information and not tell us who they are, it's literally 4chan. The New York Times should just become 5chan and go out of business.
That's right. 8th Avenue Chan on 42nd Street or wherever there. But no, I think it's if you think about if there were decisions made. Remember, this happened over Labor Day weekend, on Labor Day, when they received the letter. I mean, how did the decision-making process work at the New York Times? Did the managing editor or editor-in-chief say, before we publish this, why don't we have a few of our top investigative reporters? We can't ask Krugman to do it because he's completely out to lunch. But, you know, let's get Maggie Haberman. Oh, can't do that. She's conflicted. Who should we get, you know?
Well, I think the first criteria is who's available to have sex with this source, because that's the way they seem to be vetting their sources.
But they did not clearly do their job properly. I mean, they should have said, you know, let's make this a news piece. Let's get additional sources to corroborate it. Let's not report it under an anonymous name as opinion. Let's make it a real news story and dig into it if it's so serious. And instead, they allow this supposed member of the resistance, unelected, you know, and judging by all the denials which have come out from cabinet and high-level people, you know, we're going to be left with the body man, the butler, the pastry chef, you know,
with the lead pipe in the kitchen.
Exactly. I mean, anyway, this is not one of the finest moments, I don't think, of the New York Times.
And I'm sorry to be wasting so much time, but Charles, isn't the thing that this very op-ed describes sedition? You can't just get 5 people together and decide because you and a bunch of people on television don't like the president that you're going to work against him. That is treason, isn't it? I don't
know whether it's treason or sedition. I think treason.
What's the difference between those two things?
I honestly don't know, but I think it's certainly not cricket. Let's put it that way. It's not what you're supposed to do.
Gin rummy.
Yeah. Which caused me to then go back, and I think it's important if we have the hypothesis that there is a deep state, that it has been working against the interests of the nation of the United States of America to try to promote a new world order in which the United States has an important role. There we go. Yeah, that's sedition, I think. As opposed
Sedition
to
is just conduct or speech
inciting people to rebel.
So there's a lot of people that see Madonna and Rosie O'Donnell and Kathy Griffin, and then treason in law is the crime that covers some of the more extreme acts against one's nation. So perhaps sedition is treason.
Well, I'd say sedition to me is a crime, a serious crime, and it does seem to me that that's what they're doing. Treason, we don't yet know that we don't have, murder of specified social superiors. I don't think it's treason quite yet, but I think it's probably sedition.
So I'm very interested, and that's a good reason for the See, they try to position it as, oh, Trump is pissed, so he wants an investigation. No, Trump is the president, even if you hate him, and if someone openly publishes a statement that they're working against the president, we have to investigate that.
So what else are they doing?
Right.
They've only told you some of what
and they've infiltrated the White House. It's not cool at all.
Right, exactly. And we remember that early period when he first got to the White House. You had people jumping the fence. You had people immediately after their telephone calls, suddenly they appear in the press. But if we could just quickly for a second go back to the slide. When we think in this section 1 comments, the team to me that seems to be most likely are the Gary Cohn, H.R. McMaster, those type of people at a very high, they're gone, but their senior staffers, some of those senior staffers may still be there. And the one knock I would say on Jared Kushner, the one serious mistake that I think he's made, some have been good things, to employ Jamie Gorelick as his lawyer to help him through the confirmation process. That was a disastrous, idiotic move and could stand at the core of this problem. Because Jamie Gorelick goes way back to being a deputy to Janet Reno. She's the one who got attacked for erecting the wall between the FBI and the CIA that made it more likely that we'd have 9/11. She has a very checkered background in crony capitalism at Fannie Mae, where she made tons of money, and she was a law partner of Mueller's.
What was Kushner thinking?
Exactly. I don't think he was thinking. And again, there are these very naive. Kushner was the one who supposedly brought Gary Cohn in to, so there are a lot of bad decisions. And we think about Jared Kushner, here in New York. If Washington, D.C. is the political swamp, New York is definitely the economic swamp.
Right.
And, I would be looking down that trail, not necessarily at Jared, because I hope that he is not the writer of this, but more at high level. I'd be going down and saying, all right, this person who wrote this claims that they went into the Oval Office and removed something from the president's desk. How many people have the privilege of going into the Oval Office unattended? I mean, it's got to be. I hope it's not a list. At Bill Clinton's era was probably, some very odd things about that list. It was all female and it was a long list.
But they had a lot of access.
Right, but I would hope, under the Trump presidency that it's not even 100 people, I would say.
I was going to say, it's got to be 10 people. Put them all in a room and look them straight in the eyes and see who gets nervous.
Right. So this caused me, this incident with the op-ed caused me to go back over and lay out here a few things that I hope, particularly our new viewers, will begin to think about. We have said in prior broadcasts that this conspiracy to promote the deep state against American interests goes all the way back to about 1988. We're not going to reprise all of the timeline. We'll just pick it up. By 2010, some really interesting things. June and July of 2010, that's when these supposed Russian spies were rounded up, I want to say June 27th, 2010, and then released July 7th or thereabouts, 2010, which to me was very curious at the time. Why spend so much time rounding them up? Why, once you had them, did you then go ahead and release them in an unequal exchange for fewer of our agents that were trapped over or our allies trapped in Russia? And recently there's been some interesting stuff. Anna Chapman's husband turned up dead.
Yeah.
I think in May, and Skripal was one of the agents that we bargained to get his release for.
Really?
Yeah.
See, and it was weird that the op-ed was even talking about Skripal and upset that Trump didn't put sanctions against Russia for something that there hasn't even been a legitimate investigation into. They just said, oh, Russia did it.
And then we know that this Doug Campbell guy, William Campbell, alleges that there was all kinds of shady dealings involving elements of Russia, the FBI, business people, going back to 2006, when Mueller was still head of the FBI. So I think we need to go back over these things, back over ground and say, if the deep state was, involved trying to promote globalism at the expense of, a sovereign U.S. country, that's a bad thing, a very bad thing.
Yeah.
But we need to go back over this ground. What was going on with William Campbell? What was going on with his story? Why, when he tried to come forward, was he threatened? What's really going on? What's going on with this prisoner exchange? Now, Cheryl Atkinson, in this third point, has done a great timeline. If we can hit that link. It's, we're not going to try to read it all. This is for our viewers to think about looking at later. If you go down the page a little bit, there's several timelines. And this was done July 26, 2018. And it starts here in 2011 and then 2012. It takes you through year by year by year, point by point by point. We need the crowd and perhaps Katika, who's very good on Twitter and is working on a timeline out of the Hillary R. Clinton FBI vault dump, to see what was really going on here. I think we have to understand the balance of power inside the FBI and the CIA, the pro-Yeltsin, the pro-that camp Russian allies in the U.S., the anti in the U.S., similar in Russia. What was really going on with the FBI, senior FBI people in Russia, CIA people in Russia, and these various people around the swamp who now figure in the investigations of the Clinton Foundation, ranging from Carter Page, I think, is a small element in it, but Alexander Downer, Steele, Christopher Steele, all these different people, to see what was really going on in the 2015-2016 period. I believe you have to go back and really flesh this history out. And so far, nobody's done that yet in the kind of detail I'd like to see. So then we get this whole issue. Remember, I'm a big fan of balance. If you're going to go after David Petraeus for mishandling classified information, which happened to be his travel schedule that was confidential inside his house, if you're going to go after him and bounce him out of the CIA after the election in 2012, okay, why is it not an indictable, prosecutable, and convictable offense for Hillary Clinton as Secretary of State to operate the entire department over unsecure servers using unsecure devices, and worse, to keep all that information in her various mansions after she left Foggy Bottom? And how do you square that up? How do you get this guy and not go after Hillary? And by the way, when looking at it, I was just scrolling on the timeline and up comes this article by Michael Hastings, who is no longer with us, on this Petraeus issue. And we may remember that Hastings, before he died in an unexplained car crash, was telling people he was onto a gigantic scandal that he wanted to reveal. This ground by the crowd and others needs to go, we need to go back over this. We really need to go back over, why was Petraeus bounced? What were the reasons for that? How do those reasons compare to the various activities, known and unknown so far, of Hillary Clinton, Cheryl Mills, Barack Obama, Loretta Lynch, and all these other people using alias emails, operating over non-secure private servers and email accounts? How do we square this all up? I mean, is the simple answer that Petraeus was, I don't know that he's a Republican or he's a military guy, but Petraeus was not on, Team Clinton, Obama, Bush swamp, so he got nailed. Hillary is, all in, so she gets away with murder.
it could be as simple as there's just one aspect of the plan that he's not on board with and they need to get him out of the way.
It could well be, but so that was interesting. Then we think about, people are trying to understand how, this is number 5, how Abedin, by June of 2012, how Abedin had 4 jobs. I mean, Barack Obama and others were saying, you know,
Bringing home that bacon.
Exactly.
Even though she's Muslim.
Yeah, I got to pay for that wiener.
It's turkey bacon.
but so Grassley was pushing really hard, and it took him a long time, but by August 15th, 2016, he produced this report about the special government employee, specifically what was Abedin doing with these 4 jobs. But I don't think back then, I know back then, that the Senate and I and others did not know as much as we now know about the full extent of the Clinton Foundation frauds. So we go back into this timeline and we say to ourselves, all right, June 2012, what was let's think about Abedin. Who is she? She has connections, deep ties into the Middle East. She may speak multiple foreign languages, for all we know. She went to George Washington University and seems to have learned something, unlike Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who also went to George Washington and claims she knows nothing about politics and economics because she has a degree in that.
Doesn't the CIA recruit very heavily from George Washington University?
And many places. But anyway, so the question here is, or the point here is that going back into the timeline, in June of 2012, what was it important to have done? It was important for Barack Obama to get reelected. Otherwise, this whole thing would have blown up in smoke. And in June of 2012, what was going on towards the end of that month? Mohamed Morsi won the election in Egypt, and just almost the same time as Abedin became a special government employee and worked at Teneo and worked for the Clinton Foundation and worked for the State Department.
And the Saudi Arabian government.
And who knows who else. Just at that same time, Mohamed Morsi, in his inaugural speech in Arabic, said apparently that his #1 goal was to free the blind sheikh, the person who had tried to blow the World Trade Center up in 1993. And that was not going to sit too well, I don't think, with the American electorate, that we had installed somebody whose #1 objective was to free the blind sheikh before the 2012 election. So I think this whole analysis of Abedin needs to be tied back into the timeline of what was going on in the Arab Spring. It needs to be tied back into the Clinton Foundation and the donations it was receiving from these various Arab governments and Arab business people. You know, what monies went towards the Clinton Foundation, what favors were gotten in return, what was the State Department's role in all these exchanges, how carefully were the conflicts regulated by the Memorandum of Understanding and the apparatus that was supposedly in place. And I think the answer we know is it wasn't regulated at all. That was the reason that the private servers, the emails were sent over private servers. That was the reason that Lois Lerner's emails were all missing, or the important ones are missing, because you didn't want anybody to know how favors were traded for access. Money was traded for access, money was traded for leniency and prosecution. You didn't want anybody to know all that. And we're going to, my guess is that Donald Trump's people already know a lot of this.
If you and I know it, they know it.
I would assume. And then we think I hadn't checked this until recently, but I hadn't realized that the date here, here's our friend, not friend, but this person we know, Nicholas Confessor, who wrote about the Clinton Foundation August 13th, 2013, I think it was, pointing out that Jeb Bush stood down on February 22nd, 2016. That's when he gave up, having blown $130 million in his, you know, if you thought Hillary was lazy on the campaign trail, this guy, I mean, he was low energy, as Donald Trump said. He was low energy. I'd be kind of upset, you know, if you managed to blow $130 million, you got nothing to show for it. He stands down February 22nd, 2016. This is 22 days after John Giacolone, the special agent in the FBI, who supposedly was leading the efforts to study Clinton mishandling of classified information, after he retired unexpectedly, and after McCabe was promoted into the #2 job, you know, 3 weeks after that, Bush stands down. As a guess, the gleeful Clinton insiders said, "This is fantastic. The supposed frontrunner, the establishment candidate, is out. that means Donald Trump will be the nominee. Let's get him. Let's get him. Let's make his life miserable. And so when you go back again into the timeline, you begin to stitch it all together in a way that does begin to present motive, means, and opportunity for a criminal conspiracy in the deep state to try to install Hillary Clinton to protect the exposure of all the past misdeeds, and also make it very deeply wound, if not grievously wound, Donald Trump should he become president. There's a rich tapestry, I think, in this timeline that needs to be organized and will be explained to the American people. And we're trying to send strands of the tapestry out so you can consider the beauty of this and the ugliness of that, and and then we put it all together in one flying carpet. We'll all travel together and understand that this has really been an amazing blot on the tradition and the sacrifices of our founding fathers and the brave men and women who built this great country. None of us ever signed up for this idea that these elections, these primaries, they don't matter.
Yeah, I think
no one signed for that.
We're seeing epic corruption coming to a head like a giant, ugly pimple that's about to pop.
But so then, on point 7, the question I've long had, we've talked about it in the past, who in the hell vetted John Brennan? How the heck did he get a security clearance, given his professed love for the Communist Party, the Soviet Union, his conversion to Wahhabi Islam, his, strange...
Same religion as Huma Abedin, by the way.
Right, yeah. And who vetted this guy to let him into the White House? And then who vetted him to become head of the CIA?
Could this be Barry B-Rock Obama?
Exactly. And, I think that's the files on that. Now that Donald Trump has got his person in as CIA, and he's been seated now for almost, not quite 2 years, in January, 2 years next January, Donald Trump and his people need to go back in. Clearly, Donald Trump has, I believe, the highest security clearance that anybody can have in theory.
Donald Trump does?
In theory.
I've heard that's not correct.
Well, it should be the case, in my view.
I don't think it is.
I think it should be.
I agree.
But and I think there should be a public debate on how that might work. But with this John Brennan character, as you say, maybe he's the author of this piece. He's certainly out there on the air daily making outrageous claims on CNN fake news and MSNBC fake news about the president. But unfortunately, the lamestream media quickly picks it up and runs with it. So if we go quickly, and I'm trying to keep us to the time here. There's one quick point I'll make before we get into economic truth. The BRICS nations, which were, I think, a creation of sensible economic theorists, was, forget the dying, old, aging economies in the US, Europe, and Japan. It's the BRICS nations that are going to be the future: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Very fascinating that this Russia is now welcoming the Afrikaner, some Afrikaner white families into Russia because they were able to survive and build out the western coast of South Africa, the southwestern coast of South Africa, over, I think, 4 centuries at least.
I think Russia's pretty racist as well. It's always been a very homogeneous society, and there's not a lot of black people in Russia, so I could see South African white people and Russian people getting along.
Right, well, and also the conditions, farming conditions in Russia must be brutal. You've got the very cold winters and hot summers and no infrastructure and all that kind of stuff. So it's logical, but I think it's interesting that they would do this. And then when you consider as well that Russia is very much involved producing certain types of precious metals, oil and gas, of course, and South Africa has a lot of precious metals as well, so, and gold. So we've said before that the crowd here can do more than just listen. The crowd can reach out, and you have been, and that's fantastic, and that's why I enjoy working with you, Jason, that so many of your followers are actually out there making a difference.
I thought it was the Goofy movie posters.
I like those too. Those work for me. So we'll run very quickly through what happened in the most recent week. I'm a tennis, not fanatic, but a fan. And you know, Nike invested a tremendous amount of energy into supporting first Colin Kaepernick, and that's not working out so well, and now Serena Williams. And I did find it odd the degree to which so much money was spent on advertisements, expensive advertisements, promoting, you know, the return of Serena Williams. Now, she is a fantastic tennis player, but her performance yesterday, trash-talking the ref, really was disgraceful, frankly. And this, I put this up because if you want to see what happened, those of you who are not tennis fans, you can see this very young, slight 20-year-old, part Japanese, part American, much physically less strong than Serena, just kicked her butt, 6'2", 6'4", which is, in a final, to have a 20-year-old take on somebody who's won 24 Grand Slam championships and dispatch her like it was a tennis lesson, with the crowd rooting against the 20-year-old.
Wow, that would be interesting to watch.
So it's people can watch that later, and our mutual friend Michael Moore has written about it here, so I wanted to give him prominence.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll be talking about Nike in just a few minutes. It's because they've made a big mistake in my view.
So that's on True Pundit.
Yeah.
Very nice.
So if we can just jink back to the slides. Yeah, Donald Trump's, I hope this gets right to his tweet. Yeah. This came out at 6:47 p.m. I guess yesterday. I mean, Donald Trump is so I don't know if he does this himself or if people. I think he may write these things himself.
He must.
He's saying, if I'm so bad, how did I beat Hillary so badly? What does that say about Hillary?
Right.
Is in essence what he's saying here. But this is this quick counterpunching that he does. You notice that he doesn't hit first. You know, you hit him, he hits back 10 times as hard.
Why do people get annoyed when I do that? I wonder if those are troll people.
I guess. But these are, I mean, this is pretty effective.
I like the Trump.
I do follow Donald Trump's Twitter feed, actually. I check it in the morning. Not first thing in the morning. You know, I do other things first thing
right
in the morning.
After Zero Hedge.
Right after Zero Hedge, exactly. So then you know, don't click this yet if you don't mind. Here's Barack Obama, somebody who missed ISIS. He said ISIS was the JV.
Junior varsity, right?
You know, and then he, in this appearance on Friday, he attacked those who would say, you know, something sinister had happened in Benghazi as conspiracy theorists. And then he went out and he suggested that the Trump team, if you're a Trump follower, you're probably a Nazi sympathizer in so many words. I mean, that is way, way beyond the pale to say that, you know, because you like Donald Trump, you could be a Nazi sympathizer. I mean,
even his Jewish son-in-law and daughter.
Right, exactly. Yeah,
they love
grandchildren,
the Nazis.
And grandchildren.
It's crazy.
You know, I mean, well, I suppose you got George Soros, right?
You know, in addition to doing his stand-up routine, I thought it was ridiculous. I don't remember if it was the Anaheim speech or the Illinois speech, but Obama was like, "We're going to fight for equal pay," and everyone was like, "Yeah," and he was like, "What about ice cream? Everybody get behind the ice cream." Yeah, I love ice cream. It's like bacon. It's like the most obvious stuff that he's doing nothing about, but everybody likes.
Equal pay, you're going to go talk to Hillary Clinton about the fact that she's getting all these people to work in her nonprofit as interns and paying them nothing?
The craziest thing he said was that, you know, we don't have a system where you need $1 million to get your voice heard in Congress. And I was like, wait a minute, we do.
Yeah, it's called the Clinton Foundation or the Obama Foundation.
But I think everybody knows, and even the people in the audience were kind of like, they're like, wait a minute, my voice isn't being heard in Congress. You've got to be a millionaire. He said you don't need millionaire lobbyists to be heard in Congress. It was like, huh? Who the hell are you talking to?
Is that the African National Congress you're talking about?
It's like his public, you know, whatever, and his private something else.
Doesn't make sense. But meanwhile, the Trump rallies are just, if we hit this link, and it's a free, I like Free Republic, it's great, but this is explaining that there's going to be at least 2 Trump rallies next week. One in this town in Missouri, where I think Rush Limbaugh's from, and then in Jackson, Mississippi, in another big venue.
Has he done any in New York?
He should do one in upstate New York.
But not Madison Square Garden?
That would be pretty funny, actually.
It would be great.
He'd probably sell tickets to that and make money.
More than 750 for Barack Obama.
I would hope. But you know, he's out there.
We should go compare like Kevin Spacey's movie, how many tickets sold, and like Corey Feldman's terrible band, and like how that compares to the Barack Obama rally.
That's right. No, it's not as bad as the second reboot of the Hillary Clinton campaign on Welfare Island. That was pathetic. Then our good friend Janine Pirro, again, was on fire. I should have put that in green, actually. This is a YouTube thing. But you notice, Jason, this has only 59,000 views. This is from yesterday.
Well, that's a lot of views.
Right, but it's Fox, right, putting it up.
Well, it's Barbara Worthington.
Right, putting up something of a Fox video. I mean, but it's really, for
I
people
guess people are searching for Judge Janine, for sure.
But when you have a moment, I mean, she is, let's just put it this way, if you want somebody who is willing to sort of be aggressive in an argument, look no further than Judge Janine. Now, what does it tell us about the analytics here? Does it tell you the...
Well, it says it's not available. This person's made their subscriber count unavailable. And the number of views, it says not available. I don't know, is it total views? I don't know what this is showing. Something screwy with YouTube.
And Google.
Yes, exactly.
So if we go back into the body, we don't need to necessarily provide this link to Lionel, but you do have a link to my appearance with Lionel on Thursday.
He's over the flu, apparently.
He's over the flu. We have this story again. Let's not hit the link because I'm mindful of the time.
It was a very good appearance, by the way, on Lionel.
Oh, thank you. Google is so powerful that they decided that they would just ignore Congress and not send anybody to the hearing last week. So it's no surprise that an overwhelming percentage of the employees of Google all contribute to the Democratic Party, and most likely to far left-leaning causes and PACs.
I like this picture of the vacant chair.
Yeah, I don't think that's acceptable.
It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it's like...
And of course, Eric Schmidt stepped down, and of course, Eric Braverman now working for the Eric and Wendy Schmidt, Schmidt Futures, I think it's called. That's a new thing. And of course, all kinds of weird things going on there. The Google Project Zero. Matt Tate is linked to that Google Project Zero and has done a lot of what seems to be disinformation reporting relative to Peter Smith. So there's something going on with Google relative to the whole disintegration of Hillary Clinton.
Right. Here, this is a quick link saying that, and I don't know what this site is, because they're doing good work. I don't know how you can, Sarism or something like that, but they're saying that Gab AI, whatever that is being blocked at New Jersey public rest stops. I mean,
I don't know that that's really huge news. Gab AI, we're getting so little uptake on Gab AI, and I pay to be on it.
It says conservative social media.
I don't know, it's not working that well. Gab.ai, I'm sorry, Gab.ai, you need to step up your game. They shouldn't be blocked.
Right. And we don't, I mean, I have noticed that when I go into the New York Public Library and I try to see, go to certain websites that are politically conservative, which will remain nameless, they get blocked in the New York Public Library, which is not, the New York Public Library is not, I don't think it's, I think it's a separate entity. I don't think it's part of the New York City government, but you know, the degree to which censorship could be, as the quality of mainstream, in quotes, news plummets, and as the average person gets more and more of his or her news, via these different pipes that can be easily, constricted. The question of how much power these social media outfits and Google have is a question that really deserves a ripe public debate.
Well, they're certainly preventing people in New Jersey using the toilet from reading what's going on Gab.ai. That's really an outrage, Charles. I don't know what we're going to do about that.
So then we don't need to hit the Alex Jones link, but just to point out, I mean, lo, how the mighty, in quotes, have fallen. I mean, Alex Jones did build up quite a substantial business. I believe he was making decent money and had a large subscriber base and, was getting a lot of views and stuff, and they just decided, we're going to take you off the playing field, bud.
Well, not only that, they took his app off of the App Store from Apple, which really seems like, I mean, we've been talking about antitrust and like all of these individual companies sort of acting in concert. Definitely seems coordinated to some extent. Oh yeah, here's Alex and here's Jack.
Right, and so the idea that I believe Thomas Jefferson had, and those who advocated for freedom of expression, was you really want to let outlandish theories, theories that could be deemed outlandish, you want those in the public forum so that if by some chance they're not outlandish but true, thinking about Galileo, for example, defied conventional wisdom and suffered for it mightily, you allow these outlandish theories out and let the people who can rebut them. What you don't do is you start saying, well, I don't like Alex Jones for this personal reason, and I don't like so-and-so for this person. No, you encourage the free exchange of information. I mean, let's not to pick on, Chelsea PH diarrhea too much here, but I mean, to great fanfare, she announced that, I forget whether it was 3.4 or 4.3 trillion of economic value was created because women were allowed to have abortions. And at the time, I was like, what? Show me the math on that one. And that immediately trended, that immediately got a lot of exposure on Twitter and elsewhere. Here she's a PhD. And that's, obviously she didn't have to take any math or accounting or logic.
Ethics classes.
Or ethics classes to come up with that thing, or she had a tin ear to say something like that. Well, now, weeks later, those comments are roundly, in quotes, debunked. But who was it? I think it was Mark Twain said, a lie travels halfway around the world before the truth has a chance to catch up.
And get its pants on.
Or get its pants on, or whatever, yeah, or skirt. But, I think it is, these tools that have been created, we really don't know quite yet how powerful these tools are that are being used to sort of shape public opinion, in theory to exchange information.
Right.
We don't even know who's really running, who exactly at Twitter is making these decisions, at Facebook, at Google, and elsewhere. What training do they have? Are they news people? Or are they tech?
Oh, you mean to separate the news from the fake? Well, the other thing about freedom of speech, Charles, I always understood that you want to let Nazis or KKK or whoever express their opinion so that the public can determine those guys are idiots.
Exactly.
Should do the same thing. If people don't like Alex Jones or do like Alex Jones, put them on there and let people decide.
Exactly. So there are some ominous signs on the horizon, speaking as a finance weenie. A number of the large markets, large banks, complex companies seem to be teetering on the edge. I see a situation now where you've got Europe and the emerging markets going the wrong way. And here's this guy, Paul Waldman, I don't even know who he is, thinking he's really smart, saying it's not the economy, stupid. In essence, what's going to drive voter decisions at the end of this, in November 6th this year. He's absolutely wrong. It is the economy. Absolutely, it's always been the economy. In America, it always will be the economy. The elections, people are not moved to vote unless conditions are really bad and they want to see change, think 2007 and 8, or
16.
really good and they don't want to see things change for the worse. And so for Barack Obama to get up there as he did, and mind you, I think he gave a very good speech in 2004, and there are moments when he's been inspiring and eloquent, but to get up there in front of 750 Mouseketeers, and
talk about getting kicked out for smoking, and I know he was smoking weed.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt of that.
But the other thing is, he was like, oh, I was a teenager, so okay, now you've just encouraged teenagers all over the country that it's okay to smoke cigarettes.
Including your daughters.
It's such a dope Barack Obama.
Yeah. But the point here is that he then got up there and he, fairly lamely, and since when did the man who gave the speech in 2004 turn into Urkel before our various eyes? But that annoying. But he got up there and he was saying, and not even like with cadence and delivery, he was saying, we don't want to go backward. We do want to go forward. I'm like, wow, that's inspiring.
What I observed is he came out there, he went Chris Rock, Jerry Seinfeld,
Urkel,
Bill Cosby, then he settled into Barack Obama.
Right.
And it was like, what did we just see?
Yeah, that's right. We saw a man auditioning for, you know, to play a key role in his Netflix series, I guess.
Exactly.
That's what we saw.
I know he's sitting around watching stand-up, working on his delivery.
Right. Yeah, he needs to work a little bit more on it. So what this election is going to be all about, absent market crash risk, terrorist incidents, which God forbid don't happen, is the economy. So I thought I'm not going to take you through even more than just a few of these numbers. For the people who are numbers challenged and like colors, okay, red is bad, okay? So when you look at this chart, you see a lot of red. And what I've done here, crying Chuck Schumer and others have come out saying, you know, Donald Trump's talking about 4.1, 4.2 GDP economic growth. I don't want to hear about GDP. I just want to hear about other things, more details. I want to look at more detailed picture. This is a more detailed picture. This is telling you how much the average person made in the widely defined private sector. This is total compensation, so that's salary and benefits. And it's important to point that out because in the private sector you don't get that much by way of benefits, but in the military and in the government you get a lot of benefits. So when you look at total compensation, not wages, this was the situation in 1987. The average person made $27,000. Doesn't sound like much.
No.
That's across the whole economy. That's with the Wall Street tycoons in that number, right? So the real number is even, when you take out the top 10%, it would be even lower than that. And you see that people in the military made slightly more than that. In the bureaucracy, the remaining portion of the government made, you know, even more than that. And the total overall government and everything was $28,000, right? Within the private sector, you had manufacturing, 32,953. Now, why do we focus on manufacturing jobs? Manufacturing jobs are the jobs in the main that provide export, the potential to export American-made products to earn foreign currencies. When countries get in trouble, your currency gets attacked, so you need to find some way to get more foreign currency.
When they get in trouble, the currencies get attacked? What do you mean?
If you think about China now under assault, Turkey under assault, when a country gets in trouble, investors say, we don't like what's going on, they start pulling their money out of the country, suddenly the value of the dollar, for example, would go down if people were very concerned about our economy as opposed to other places.
Because they take investments out of the United States.
Right, and the only way to get foreign currency, you've got foreign debt, you've got to repay it with, you know, some kind of foreign currency. If you have a weak domestic currency, you want your export industry to be vibrant. You want it to be something that's world-beating. You don't want to see it shrink and shrink and shrink and shrink. And the last thing you want to do, back in 1987, the average wage in the non-military portion was 95% of what you got in manufacturing, right? Now, the bureaucracy is principally unionized. Manufacturing has a higher percentage union workers than other places, all right? Unions fight for their workers, but unions
not the camera, not the cinematographers.
Right. But in actual fact, what they do is they push up the cost of employment, and they can in places where you can shift. You can't shift U.S. government workers. You can't say, all right, what we're going to do is, instead of having U.S. government workers shuffle a bit,
bring people from Mexico
or India or Vietnam, or have the paper shuffling done in India, and we'll fire all the paper shuffling. Unfortunately, you can't do that, or maybe you can, but at present you can't do it.
Pakistani workers in.
So I'm going to show you some really stunning figures in the next two slides after this. When you, in the real world, in the private sector, in the places where you do build things, when you raise the cost of an employee past a certain point, the employees shift out of this country, all right? You see employment plummet. So that did happen in manufacturing, but the reverse has happened in the bureaucracy. Employment levels have increased even as the costs of employing people have gone. The average cost of a bureaucrat, $96,000. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
You know,
why has it gone up so much?
Because there's no check on it. There's free money, the interest rates are low, we're running these gigantic deficits, no one's looking at it, the swamp is happy, you know, and we don't yet know, you know, talk about Uma Abedin who has 4 jobs. We don't know how many of the bureaucratic jobs are no-show jobs. We don't know how many
I think there's a lot. As we learned from the Iwan scandal, they got into that PeopleSoft system, and they could make fake employees and pay. They love paying fake bank accounts.
So we don't know any of that. And the other point, this analysis that I'm going to take you through, this just takes, these are U.S. government statistics. I'm going to show you the source in the next several pages. But this private is not truly the private sector, in my opinion, because it includes educational companies, it includes healthcare, which is very big, it includes the legal profession, it includes other, which basically, yeah, they're technically in the private sector, but they depend upon the public sector. They're intermeshed with the public sector. But even just looking at this, you'd be asking yourself, why in the hell is the cost of these bureaucrats rising so much and so steadily, even in the Bush years? Bush, I would argue, W. Bush was all in for the swamp.
Oh yeah.
All in. And so let's go to the next page.
He's like a hood ornament on the swamp Cadillac.
Right. All right, so remember I told you the counts. Back in 1987, there were 14.9 million in the bureaucracy, and there were 18.6 million in manufacturing. Okay?
What do you mean in?
Working. These are work accounts.
Oh.
Okay. And there were 2.4 million in the military. That's because we were still, you know, Soviet Union had not blown up, Eastern Europe was still, you know, behind the wall, etc. So we've actually, since 1987, we've dropped the size of our military.
Almost by half.
Well, and in 2017, not quite, yeah, we're way under, but what, in this whole period, you know, our military is far more stretched than it was fighting. We weren't really fighting in military battles with the Soviet Union and China. We did that back then with 2.4 million people, and now we're doing whatever we've done here with 1.5 million people, yet the bureaucracy has gone from 14.9 million up to 18.6 million. Why do you need so many people?
Put some army uniforms on some of these bureaucrats and get them on a plane out to
But
Iraq.
think of it, we have 1.5 million in the military and 18.6 million doing what?
Yeah.
Right? And no
Swamping
accountability.
it up.
And look at what happened with manufacturing. It went from 18.6 million down to 12 million. I mean, that's a big change. And the reason this is so significant, manufacturing operations, if they're based in the United States, they make the finished product, but then they buy parts, ideally from, in sub-assemblies, from other American companies who buy raw materials. And the workers at all these chains inside a country, like the United States, will need to buy. They pay their employees, and then they've got to pay for their food and their shelter, et cetera. So you keep you keep manufacturing inside this country. The ripple, what's called, the economists call it the multiplier effect, of having, you know, a manufacturing worker be paid $90,000 or whatever it is a gigantic thing. So policies that encourage, the globalist policies that encourage us to say, you know what, forget manufacturing, that's so last millennium. You know, we don't want to do that anymore. We'd rather just, you know, be faculty lounge lizards and do all that kind of stuff. That was a stupid-ass policy.
Stealing money is far more lucrative than making things.
Exactly. Making, that's messy. Anyway, so this comes from the BEA NIPA tables, 6.5 C and D. I was asked last week, I think, online, where did that stuff, when I mentioned full-time equivalents, where did it come from? Here's where it comes from, and that's how you get to it. If you hit this 6 here, it'll break, and then you hit down to 6.5, keep going down, 6.5 C and D. And when you do that, I look at this and say, wait a minute, there's something weird here. How come only 93 to 2000? If you go back up to the right, you'll see there's modify. Hit that. And then you hit first year, hit that arrow. No, not that one. Yeah. And put 87 in. Okay, and then hit refresh table. And it'll show you, gives you all the data. So for all these links, you can play around with this to your heart's content, but you see the level of detail. This is now, what's a full-time equivalent in an industry? If you've got part-time workers and full-time workers, you've got to figure out some ratio to make it into what are called full-time equivalent workers. Now, you can monkey around with that ratio, and that ratio is not the same year by year and even industry by industry, so there could be some not monkey business, polar bear business. You get in trouble for monkey, but
got it.
Polar bears, those are, I think, white.
Got it.
Anyway, so here's the source material and the link to that. If we go back in, Jason, to the slide, somehow. Oh, yeah, here we go. And then go to the next page. We look at this is the total compensation. So it's average pay times number of workers. And we look back in 1987, the cost of the bureaucracy was $464 billion per year, but the cost of manufacturing workers was $612 billion. So in other words, manufacturing workers were making and paying taxes into the Treasury to help pay for this very expensive bureaucracy, $464 billion just in their compensation, right? So the cost of the bureaucracy was 76% of the manufacturing compensation pool. But then look what happened by 2000. It started, this is under Bill Clinton and the beginning of globalism. The bureaucracy started getting bigger and bigger, manufacturing incomes rose, but then by the onset of the great credit crunch in 2007, the cost of the bureaucracy was almost 1.5 times manufacturing incomes. And then you go back out here to 2017, it's 170% of manufacturing incomes. This is unsustainable. We don't need to spend $1.8 trillion on a bureaucracy. And another thing that's really interesting here, look at Charlie Rangel and others are fond of talking about how expensive our military is. This is the cost of all of our military employees, okay? Yet we're spending $700 billion a year on the military.
Well, it's like the planes and stuff.
Yeah, okay, but how, we hear about the $25,000 toilet seat and the,
Right.
the very expensive this and that. How much, who is checking to make sure that this equipment, is actually procured cost effectively? Who's doing that check, and what are the ties of those people? This, when you look at this, when I look at this and I say, okay, 150 billion on compensation, that's a lot. And this number, 150 million, is going to come in another context shortly. That's a lot of money, but what happened to the other 550 billion? What are we spending that money on? And then beyond that, this 1.8 billion on non-military bureaucrats. I mean, to put that number in perspective, there are probably 10 countries in the world that have a total economic output greater than that number, and there are 200 countries. Okay, we have got a country of bureaucrats inside this United States of America. What the hell are they doing?
SES.
Exactly. Well, what are they doing? Right? And to decide we want to inflate the bureaucracy as we destroy, the manufacturing incomes, this just does not make sense to me at all. So the economy, this is all there, people are saying, and I think Barack Obama likes to say, how does he call it? Like economy. He doesn't say economy or whatever. He has this funny way of saying it. But anyway, the economy under Barack Obama certainly was not going in the right direction. And to suggest that Donald Trump is taking excess credit for all the good work that Barack Obama did is like, that's economic ignorance.
Well, I saw something that said that the GDP hadn't grown by 4.2% since 1993.
Well, again,
1933.
Well, no, that's not right. So GDP though, again, lying Chuck Schumer and crying Chuck Schumer is right about the fact that GDP is an economic measure that is, I believe, is scored to make more government spending and more deficit spending look big. You can borrow a lot of money, you can have massive operating deficits, and that will pump up the value of GDP, even though I think it harms, in the short and long term, the true economic performance of a country. But I think when you think about paychecks, that's, forget about GDP and this and that. You walk into somebody and say, GDP's up 4%,
so
but I'm going to cut your paycheck 20%.
Yeah. You
care about the paycheck, you don't give a rat's ass about the 4% GDP. That's why I make this in, paycheck terms.
Yeah.
Okay?
Makes sense.
So if we go to the next slide, and I know we've only got 15 minutes till Liliana. Nike, I mentioned, was in the news. Look, Nike's common shares are traded. It's a big company. It's a member of the Dow Jones Industrial Average, 30 companies in that. On Friday, the company was worth $128 billion. That's a lot of money.
Yeah. Okay,
we saw that the total military spending is $150 billion. So
wow,
per
Nike
year.
could buy that.
But this is from, this is the source here, our Securities and Exchange Commission for any publicly traded company. There's lots of requirements. I just took a few minutes and took out some key numbers here. And this shows you that Nike is valued at 26 times forward net earnings. This table doesn't show you, but I'll tell you that it's trading at 13 times book value. These are both very rich numbers. That says it is a very expensive company in the market. 41% of the sales of Nike are in North America, but the sales are faltering there. They're down 2% from the preceding year. The big growth areas are in Europe, Middle East, and Africa, and I would guess Europe is negative and Middle East and Africa are up. China is up. So international is the opportunity area for Nike. They're not doing so well in North America. And their margins, the margin calculations, that's earnings before interest and taxes divided by revenues, are all over the map. They're 24% in North America, they're lower in Europe, Middle East, 17%. In China somehow they're higher at 35%, then 23% in other places. And I see this gigantic adjustment where they take the earnings before interest and taxes down by 2.7 billion, which causes me right away to say, wait a minute, there's monkey business in the allocation here. We don't really know how good these margins are in each area. But bottom line, what used to happen is that you used to sell sneakers and sports apparel, you might have made it originally in the United States, now you make it internationally, you then send it across the ocean, let's say back into North America. It doesn't immediately go to a store, it goes to, there'll be a wholesaler, there'll be distributors, there'll be a retail chain, so there's a lot of margin and profit margin in theory in each pair of sneakers. And you ask yourself, let's think about the business model of selling overpriced sneakers manufactured in Vietnamese sweatshops. I mean, why is that a good business model? I mean, why is it good to encourage poor people who think that they're going to, by spending $200 on a pair of sneakers, that's going to increase their chances of getting a professional sports contract? You look at the math of that, how many highly paid professional sports athletes are there, and how many people try out for it? And then you start thinking, here's a company that's overpaying Colin Kaepernick, overpaying Serena Williams, overpaying a lot of people to promote to hype the false hope that if you spend $200, $300 on this, pair of sneakers or whatever the right number is, and expensive clothes, that you're going to be a pro someday. And by the way, instead of making those sneakers in Detroit or wherever and selling them direct, bypassing this expensive chain using the internet, something you could do. Instead of doing that, the workers, a lot of these workers are in sweatshops across the world making cents per hour, and you're going to be a virtue signaler? So, I think this campaign here that Nike is on, it'd be one thing if the shares were not trading well. They're trading, I don't know, 8, 12, 15 times forward earnings and say 2.5 times book. I wouldn't be as exercised about this, but when you look at this as a finance geek and you say, wait a minute, this sure looks like a short, before the Serena meltdown. I did this work before the meltdown.
But what are you saying it looks like, a short what?
A short sale. In other words, I think this is overvalued.
So is this another example of a corporate big doing something that seems weird to drive the stock price down, like Elon Musk?
No, I don't think they're trying. This one is not trying to drive the stock price down, I don't think.
But it's having
But
that
they're doing a
effect.
good job of it. So this is something we could talk about another time, but you can get a lot of information on any publicly traded company. I just wanted to acquaint. This seems to me a poster child for why globalism sucks.
I have Adidas.
There you go. Those are German, though.
Well, I need to choose.
Why you're doing that, I don't know. But anyway, just teasing. But so if we go to the next slide. Okay.
I should get New Balance.
Exactly. Let's not. We've only got about 10 minutes until Biljana.
Right.
So let's not pull up all these links. We'll just do a few of them. There's the first. Please don't pull the link up. But this Hill story, Donald Trump is quoted as saying that his election was. The way he thinks about his election victory is that it was Hillary Clinton's funeral. And I think rumors of her death are premature.
Right.
But I got to believe that the victory party, they must have had an inkling that things were not going to go well to cancel the fireworks and all that kind of stuff several days before.
But don't you remember Bill jumping up and down for joy in that private video?
Yeah, that was impressive. Donald Trump, again, we won't pull this link up now because it'll just take more time, but for those who want to look at it later, he was at a rally, I think it was in North Dakota, and he was talking about minors, and there was a minor there in the audience, and he brings this guy on stage.
A child or someone who works in a mine?
No, somebody who works in a mine.
Ah.
And I mean, this may have been scripted, but it certainly was impressive. He's got this ability now to go place to place to place. Say, I said I was going to do this. I did do that. Are you better off? Why don't you come up from the crowd and tell us what you think, kind of thing. I mean, that's a cookie cutter formula that if things are working well, is a lot better than getting Urkel up there talking about, you know, let's not go backwards, let's go forward.
I mean, it reminds me of the guy with the rotisserie chicken thing, but he sells a lot of those.
He does.
What is that thing called?
You know, we've got a link here to one of his rallies. I mean, I've watched quite a few of them. I actually find them far more entertaining than and
Barack
instructive.
Obama's stand-up routine.
Forget that, but even then, you know, there are only certain shows on television that I think are more riveting.
Sunday with Charles.
Sunday with Charles, yes, of course. But you know, on the big channels or whatever. So here's a link, I think, to one of his more recent ones. But let's put this Breitbart piece up by Jackie Mason. And Jackie Mason, I think he is one. I'm amazed he's still alive, but
yeah,
he is hysterically funny.
I don't think it's his real hair color, but he is very funny.
Yeah. Obama taking credit for economic recovery proves he's the crazy one, which is funny. And I just, you know, not to tout me, but no, Jackie Mason's pretty famous.
Oh yeah.
This story is only 538 Facebook shares, whereas the original one, as it turns out, Donald Trump formed his exploratory committee for president on March 18th, 2015. 2 days after my piece, March 16th, 2008, that now has 82,000 Facebook shares. So
well done, Charles.
But this guy, I mean,
and you weren't even in Caddyshack 2.
I know.
So that's pretty good work.
Oh, I've never done any Las Vegas work either. To go to the Strip.
I do like Jackie Mason.
He's very funny, very quick. So, and let's also pull this one up. This is a good piece by Andy McCarthy. Exactly what crimes has Rosenstein and Mueller been investigating since May of 2007? Aren't we as taxpayers owed a list of those crimes?
Not only that, you know, in Thursday's intelligence assessment with Kevin Shipp on Patreon, Larry Klayman joined us, and the topic was that the Office of the Special Counsel is very strictly regulated, and they have to stick to the specific crime they're investigating, which they haven't. They're just talking about collusion, which is there's no
crime.
18 USC, you know, code for collusion. So the whole thing is legally invalid.
It sure seems to be highly questionable in my mind. And Andrew McCarthy is interesting. He's not, I wouldn't say he's a fanatic right-wing person. And I would say the one thing I do like about Andrew McCarthy is he will admit that he's wrong when he's wrong, which very few people do. And you know, he's of course a famous former U.S. attorney or assistant U.S. attorney in the Southern District of New York. But this is a piece well worth reading.
It's an excellent question. What's the legal basis for the special counsel investigation? And it's not Paul Manafort cheated on his taxes in 2004.
Yeah, and why are we asking this question on, you know, September 9th, 2018? How come nobody thought to ask this earlier?
Before all that money was sent on the special prosecutor, counsel.
Yeah. So, yeah. This is one, let's hit that one. This is in the Hill, 4,900 shares. Who is the person who's feared dead? Yeah, that Joseph Mifsud is missing now.
Yeah.
And this is as reported by Bloomberg News. Now that's interesting.
I think it's also weird that if someone's like, oh, you may be deceased, you would think that a statement would come out. Oh, no, I'm here.
I'm very much here.
Yeah. So probably he's deceased.
Yeah. But that's, I mean, you notice this pattern of people who somehow have played pivotal roles in the evolution of the narrative, and they end up, you know, dead under mysterious circumstances. I'm not saying this guy's dead, but I will say that Peter Smith is dead.
Yeah, well, it's definitely a lot of that going around, Charles. You got to be careful.
It'll be. Now here, this is also a quick one. This is I just noticed this morning actually, and I don't know who Shallot Reports is, but this is a long story, and it's purporting to suggest that Flynn was centrally involved trying to frame Donald Trump. Now, I'm not sure I buy that at all, but what I find very interesting...
Well, maybe unwitting.
Right, and this long piece has many factoids in it that are worth checking. So those of us in the crowd who want to do that kind of stuff, there's previous timelines, lots of interesting stuff to review and try to put into one integrated timeline.
They made Carter Page look crazy, like WWF.
Yeah, exactly.
WWE. Sorry, Charles.
That's all right.
I'm going to get stuck in
Or
a lawsuit from
WTF.
the World Wildlife Foundation.
Right. Let's see. Yeah. This is a good one, too. People talk about, recoil and horror. Donald Trump might subject people to lie detector tests. Barack Obama did that. Barack Obama ramped up prosecutions for leaking. Mike Huckabee was on Fox this morning reminding people this talking point did not come in the first several days, that Barack Obama, he didn't just target, or his people didn't just target James Rosen, they targeted James Rosen's parents.
What?
Yeah, that's widely reported. They targeted his parents, they targeted multiple members of the press. Cheryl Atkinson, we know, believe was targeted aggressively.
Oh yeah.
It's possible the House and Senate may have been spied upon, maybe the Supreme Court.
But Cheryl wasn't leaking. She was reporting on their crimes related to Fast and Furious.
Exactly.
They didn't like that.
So, certainly, if I were President Trump or a senior person on his staff, absolutely. I'd say, give me the list of people who we're going to start very simply. Give me the list on my desk right now, the people who had access to the Oval Office from January 20th through, pick a date.
When that op-ed came out.
Yeah, and I want to list every person who had access. And then just person by person by person. As this person said, this person's already said publicly, I didn't do it. Okay, you're temporarily off the hook. But, we're going to winnow it down, and we're going to figure out who did this. It's outrageous.
I have a feeling he suggested they investigate because he knows who did it, and he knows it wasn't somebody on his staff. I mean, he's hiring these people, and when I speak to even people sweeping the floor at Trump Tower, they all like Donald Trump.
Yeah. So we won't pull this link to national interest, but President Trump's record is going to overwhelm all of this rhetoric, absent, again, a prolonged market crash, and absent any kind of terrorist setback, absent any health issue. Donald Trump's record is going to just overwhelm all this chatter out of the resistance. We're beginning to see signs of, despite the escalating trade don't need to hit the link, escalated trade tensions with China, we're beginning to see hopeful signs again out of North Korea. Now they're very good.
I thought last week it was at an impasse.
But there's now been an exchange of letters, and there was the parade that didn't have any missiles, which is unusual and all that.
That's good.
And then this is a pretty funny one actually. Boris Johnson, I think, could well be the next prime minister in the UK. Remember, he was the foreign minister under Theresa May, and now he's saying that Theresa May is wrapping a suicide vest around Britain in its Brexit plan. And that's pretty aggressive to come from somebody who used to be Theresa May's foreign secretary, right?
Well, it also seems to be a jab at extremist, immigrant type.
So we're now going to talk about Sweden. I've got a slide on Sweden, but in the interest of time, people can read, our slide, my slide on Sweden, but in the interest of time, perhaps we should try to connect Biljana in.
Bringing her in now.
And I'll put on my... if she's there.
Okay, I believe we have got Biljana with us. Hello, Biljana. How are you?
Hello.
How's it going there in Sweden?
It's going, I don't know, strange.
Now, I'm going to just do a screen share with you so that when we go through your presentation, you'll be able to see it. So you should see the graphic for today's show with President Trump and General Flynn.
Yeah, I saw that.
There we go. All right, Biljana, welcome to the show. Whoops. Okay. And
Welcome, everybody.
we've got you. Okay. So how would you like to begin, Biljana? Why don't you give us a little background on what's going on there in Sweden with the election?
What's going on right now? So I see now, just to clarify, I see only the enemy of the deep state
Yes.
the screen you showed me, and that's it.
Right. When your presentation comes on, you'll see it there.
Then it will start. Okay, so now I can watch you on YouTube. Well, what I see now, as we are speaking, is that the Social Democrats are for now winning. It says that they're 83.2% participation, and there are 823,000 about votes that have been counted, and of those, close to 29% are for the Social Democrats.
Wow.
The Sweden Democrats are under 20.
So that's the Sweden Democrats is the right-wing party. Is that right?
I mean, everybody calls it right wing. It's a left-wing party.
Okay.
It has a left-wing program. It is a welfare party. It's keeping the same situation basically economically as it is with regard to the welfare or the level of tax burden on Swedes. But it is very oriented towards some kind of limitation of the immigration. And they are explicitly against the immigration growing. They're explicitly against criminal immigration. They're explicitly against the integration strategies that have been used to this point, where Sweden actually basically has certain ghettos. So they are not a right-wing party. They don't have a conservative right-wing economic program. They have a left program. They have a left social program also. And the only thing that you could call right-wing, if right-wing means patriotism only, or nationalism only, is that they want to regulate the immigration.
I see. So is this result not as good as it had been expected for the Sweden Democrats, or is it in line with polls, or?
Well, the polls were showing that the biggest party is the Swedish Democrats. These are I am in my presentation. I have the last polls from the 4th of September. Yes, and so the Center Party. As I show in my slides, actually, and people can watch it afterwards, the plan behind this entire election campaign, according to me, and as it all looks like, is that the Alliance is going to get to create a government on its own, or together with the Social Democrats. We expect the Social Democrats to lose this election, and we expect the Social Democrats to lose the capacity to choose the next prime minister in Sweden. That is what we all expect, I think. But the globalist plan, in my view, is to have the center party, the moderate party, the Christian Democrats, and the liberals together. This combination is called the Alliance. And their votes will be counted as one, and they are pretending to build government. And I think, without them explicitly saying it, but pretty obvious the way the latest debates have been organized, the chosen prime minister for Sweden is the person who visited Bilderberg not long ago. And her name is Annie Lööf. She is the center party first phase, and it has been a small party, not very high numbers. Now it's growing. It's the most it is the most fat budget party in Sweden. I have never seen anything like it before in my life. Before, all the elections have been passing by very smoothly, like a summer breeze. But now it's very different. It has been a very, very aggressive towards us as voters procedure. Their election slogans are everywhere, in every corner. Her name is everywhere, and her face is everywhere. In the corner of my park, in the huge screens on the streets, huge low kind of portraits of her, even on the trams. When they changed the big billboards. The only change is that they changed her going upwards and downwards on the billboards, just her face, you know. It has been a very, very aggressive campaign from her side. Not to mention the aggression that all the feminists that she's basically representing. She stands out as the leader of the pack of the feminists. Have been extremely aggressive as well. They have been aggressive on the streets physically.
Pink hats?
Sorry?
Pink hats?
Yeah, not only. No. Now we have moved further than that. I mean, it has been really violence in many cases. They are spitting on people. They're spitting in the face of certain photographers and journalists. They are destroying some of the party's slogans, billboards. They've been throwing stones. It is an aggressive, unusually aggressive, new type of election in Sweden. That is absolutely for sure. That's why I have one video that I wanted to show you of all the parties that are established. There is one new party that started about March 2018, and this party is called Alternative for Sweden.
Would you like to?
They are nowhere. They are not in any of the media.
Would you like to start with that video, or do you want me to show it during the presentation?
I think maybe we can start with the presentation, and then at one point we can go to the video.
Sure.
In any case, for that party, I would say it is completely ignored by the established media. Nowhere. You can never read about them. They don't exist. So they exist on Twitter. They were boycotted on YouTube. They were boycotted basically in everything they did. They did a very special tour all around the country called the Departure, or the kind of, they want to deport people. So they're showing the departure billboards in the airports. And that was pretty provocative program, but very honest, very clear, and very authentic. So you will not see them here on this first slide that you see. You have the expectations, or the polls. The results of the polls were that, as you can see, the yellow line with the sign of the blue and yellow flower, that's the Sweden Democrats. And the face of the Sweden Democrats is Jimmy Åkesson, the person with the glasses on the picture. Then you have the other face on the picture is Stefan Löfven. He is the leader of the Social Democrats. I'm not sure why they call themselves exactly Social Democrats, because they are to a great extent socialists. And they were expected to have 23.8. Right now, I'm seeing here that for the parliament count, they already have almost 29.
And that's with what percent of the vote counted?
I don't see percent, but
it's probably early returns at this point.
it's 1.2, almost 1.2 million people have voted. I mean, the votes for 1.2 million people have been counted already. So what I'm showing you here is the counting, the election as it unfolds. First, you have election for the parliament. So we are voting for the parliament, for a party, and for a specific person that is on the list. And then we are voting for the county, and you can see how many counties there are. And then we are voting for municipalities, and there are many municipalities, hundreds of municipalities. So we are voting on 3 lists, so to say. And if you don't cross any name, it goes directly to the party you're electing. But if you cross particular name, it goes to that particular name, this particular party, for this particular cause, if it's parliament, county, or municipality. So if you go back to the first slide, very, very first slide. Yeah, so there I just wanted to explain, you have the yellow line, and then there we see that this is the expectation for the Sverigedemokraterna, for the Swedish Democrats, and then the red one is the Social Democrats, and the blue one on the very left side is the moderate. You cannot describe the moderate as a right party, and you cannot describe them as a conservative party, but they have been playing the role as opposition to the Social Democrats for a while. In reality, they are a leftist party, which is supporting strongly for having private sector and private business, and supporting the interest of that private interest as well. Then you have next to it. You have the Center Party expected for 6%. I see them here already at 9% for the parliament as it goes now. Then you have Liberals, then you have Christian Democrats, and the so-called Green Party. In Sweden, it's actually called the Environment Party. Then the V sign, that you see a V sign, red sign, that's the Vänster. It stands for the left party. That's basically communists. They are communists that are leaning towards Social Democrats. They can allow some kind of business because they realize that someone has to work and pay the bills, I guess. And then you have there is a communist party, outright communist party, which wants Sweden to become a socialist country. They said, why don't they say that they want it to become a communist party? I don't understand, since they're a communist party. They're not interested in private sector at all, and they think that Israel is an illegitimate state, and if they get power, they want to boycott Israel and create Palestine. That's the Communist Party. So the so-called left party with the V sign here, it's very close to them, with a little bit of leaning over to Social Democrats. And then you have the sign F, which stands for feminists. It's called the Feminist Initiative. And the polls did not expect them to get into the parliament at all. In order to get to the parliament, you have to have 4%. In order to build a government on your own as a party, you have to have 51%.
So what happens to the votes of the people who get less than 4%?
Nothing happens. I mean, they're probably going to be used on the county level and the municipality level, but they're not getting into the parliament, and they're not building a government, and they are not participating in the choice of. They're not participating in the choice of the prime minister, which is the next stage after the counts of the election results. After any appeals, the new parliament has to decide who will be the next prime minister.
Good.
Yeah. So getting under 4% means you're not getting into the parliament. and that means you're not participating in the government, and you're not participating in the decision on who is going to be the prime minister. But they might have effects on other levels of governance. However, I am curious now, as we are talking, I can see that, for instance, the Liberals were expected to have 5.7. They have 5.1 now. The Feminist Initiative is not at all here, so they're not getting much. You don't see the other parties that are in övriga, the other parties. There you have many different parties. I saw names that I've never seen before, names that are extremely local names also. You can't really say that it's only the communists there, but there you have Alternative for Sweden. It's the most active and loud party lately, and it's the only conservative party. I mean, literally conservative party. It's suggesting flat tax, and it wants to cut the government expenses and wants smaller government. You know, everything that you think of as a conservative party, they have, and they also want to deport all the criminal immigrants. That's their goal. Yes, so we can go further just to show you a little bit of context. I mean, me and my friends, we think that the most important event that happened in Sweden the past 2 years is a terrorist attack in 2017, when 5 people were murdered on the street with a truck, and more than 100 people were injured. Heavily injured. Some people even lost a leg. I can imagine that thousands of people were traumatized by it. Everybody who is a bystander is traumatized by it also. So this is the worst terrorist attack that has happened in the history of Sweden. There have been attempts to commit such crimes, but they have not been successful. This is the only one that actually had such results for the Swedes. The person who was this is one of the victims. It's a horrible picture. I haven't ever seen it in the established media. All the established media were showing pretty okay pictures, so nobody should see horrible pictures, but I think it's important to see horrible pictures because this is the reality and we cannot sugarcoat it. This child was cut in two, and at the same time I read here the person who did it described himself as an radical Islamic terrorist. He said that he acts on behalf of ISIS or IS, the Islamic State. There was a proof that he did it. He tried to join them. He went to Turkey and tried to join them. He couldn't do it. He came back and he planned and he was in touch with them, and he wanted to kill, he said himself, he wanted to kill as many Swedes as possible. He prayed to his God, and he did this with the intention to kill as many Swedes as possible. So he killed this child, and then he killed 4 other people. As far as I remember, one of them was a foreigner who was working for Spotify here, but visiting Sweden. Now, can we go back to the picture, previous picture? Yes, I read recently that the Swedish Muslims for Peace and Justice is an organization. Is actually supported by an arm of the Muslim Brotherhood, and they are funded by the Swedish Heritage Fund, which means that if you pass away and you have no one to give your money to, or any other money that are donated to the fund, are just going directly to this organization together with the Folke Bernadotte Academy. For me, it's shocking. For me, as a private person, it's absolutely shocking to see that we are suffering such incredible violence, and at the same time that Islamic organizations are growing and they're paid and they are sustained with tax money.
Is the Heritage Fund related to the Heritage Foundation?
No.
No. Okay.
These are Swedish institutions.
It's a Swedish. It's a Swedish fund.
Got it.
Yeah. So. Yeah. So in the next slide, I'm showing you kind of the Green Party, which is now falling off of the parliament. But the Green Party had one of their representatives, and he was also a minister in the previous government. This person was part of a militant organization, right kind of wing organization in Turkey. So Islamic activist was minister in Sweden. So we see here, I'm showing you this as a sort of a symbol that all the parties, there was interviews were done by one organization, and they asked one simple question in the end of every interview, and it was yes or no to mosque prayer calls. All the parties wanted, Swedish parties, of course also the Green Party, wanted to have mosque prayer calls in Sweden, except the Sweden Democrats and Alternative for Sweden. So that tells you the situation we have here, that all these parties that are the Center Party, the Liberal Party, Globalists, they're basically all globalist parties, together with the Social Democrats, are, despite the violence, despite the terrorism, despite the fact that they have to really with Secret Service constantly protect Sweden from Islamic attacks, they still want to have mosque prayer calls in Sweden. If the alliance wins, this is what is going to happen, I suppose.
What is this?
I found one just to show you another aspect of our background, and that's the kind of an economic outlook for Sweden. And maybe, Charles, you will want to like to comment this better, since you're an expert on that. But Sweden is the lowest part of the growth in this chart.
Yeah, is this GDP per person?
Yes.
Yeah. So this is just economic output per capita. Sweden is in 17 it was bad, and in 18 it's expected to be worse. Blue is the one on the left is 17, and the one on the right is 18. And I guess the highest performers are over on the far right. You start getting interested. It's interesting there. Slovenia, is that Ireland or Iceland?
Looks like Ireland.
Ireland and Romania, of all people. But what's really interesting, most of these bars, economic growth in 2018 is slowing compared to 2017. And as we were saying earlier, Biljana, you might not have seen the presentation, we were saying that this figure really masks what's going on with private sector employment in every one of these countries. I would guess that if we could pull the information apart, we'd discover that private sector wages are falling in most of these countries.
Yes, I think so too. But that's an overall look in the situation. So our economic situation is not as good as, although it is presented in all the media that the economy is booming. Then the other part of our background, besides the economy and the terrorism we have sustained, it's also the gang rapes, and that's how you two and I met. And this is the site, gangrapesweden.com, which was taken down, but it exists still in the archive.org page. And just a summary as a background, kind of symbolic information for you, that the rape cases that I got from the courts were 50,000 rape cases for 2012, 2017. Of those, very little, less than 1,000 cases actually got to conviction. And here is what you see, the convicted for gang rapes, so not just any rapes, but gang rapes. Again, symbolic, we have talked about it a lot. You can see that the total sentences for the Swedish people is 249 and 403 years for people with non-Swedish origin. So that is only for the convicted ones, not for the indicted ones. This, of course, first it means that the justice system is really suffocated. It cannot manage so many cases. If you can convict only less than 1,000 people, or if you got 50,000 cases, it means that either all these people are liars, or the judicial system is so bad, that the law is so bad that you can never use it to get to a rapist, or it means that it is politicized and it's choosing particular kinds of perpetrators, particular types of perpetrators, so it shouldn't look that it's too bad, and that you're choosing simply which cases you're going to indict and continue with conviction.
This number of 50,000, it seems shockingly large, Biljana. How does that compare per capita with countries like the United States and biggest countries in Europe?
It's the worst in the world. I mean, it's the worst in the world, together with Mexico.
That's outrageous.
Yes, and this number, the 50,000 number of the cases that have actually reached gotten a court number, are never shown. They never reached any established media. The only thing you see is the number of the convicted cases, gang rapes or aggravated rapes. Mainly they talk about gang rapes after we fought for it for 2 years for them to mention it, right?
And you've gotten that number from actual police reporting?
This, the 50,000 I'm showing you is the actual court case, the ledgers I got from the courts. So
right.
I showed you those before. If you want, I can pick it up again and show you again how they look.
I'm just reminding the audience.
Yes, they are. I just got from each of the 43 district courts in Sweden. I got the ledgers for the past 5 years, and when I counted the numbers of cases they had to deal with, I found that there are about 50,000. There were so many that I realized it doesn't really matter if I count, because they are beyond your imagination.
Yes.
And many of them were child rapes.
Oh.
Pedophile cases and child rapes. And many of them were not resolved, never convicted, very seldom indicted. So we have, this is from my personal view, our biggest problem, because these are living beings. This is very important aspect of life, and the children are growing up in a normal environment where they can bloom and grow and learn, rather than living in such absolutely destructive, traumatic environment. So if we don't, whatever government comes, if they don't resolve that issue, Sweden is going to be in a very difficult situation in, let's say, 10 years. Because the country consists of people. It doesn't consist only of money and banks. It actually consists of physical people, of minds or lives, and it has to have some form of happiness. This is certainly not a sign of happiness in the country, nor of glorifying future. So now this slide is showing you, I just wanted to show you just some kind of prerequisites for the election. The final results are actually coming on Wednesday, because tonight is the main election. But I voted earlier, so we have been able to vote a week ago. A lot of people voted earlier, so we will not have the final results maybe tonight, because a lot of people voted like that, and we don't know what the results from those votes will be, because they're not managing to count them the same night in most cases. I think that this will matter this year because it is unusually many people who voted earlier, not the same day of the election. So I'm saying here that we have altogether 7,492,837 voters, people that are eligible to vote. Of those, as you can see, the situation in Sweden is 50-50. 50.6 women and 49.4 men. So you have more women than men, but pretty close. And then you have 4.2 first-time voters. I can imagine that the first-time voters are people that recently became citizens or eligible to vote. Also, we need to know that for the parliament and the county, the votes are counted for the Swedish citizens, but even non-Swedish citizens, people with a residency, or you could call it the green card, they have the right to vote as well locally. So they have influence in their local environment, but not in parliament. Now, when you see the age distribution for the voters, so you see that the main group of voters are between 30 and 49. This is the working and family having sort of part of the society. But most of the voters are over 65, actually. Counted, if you eliminate the 30 to 49, compared to the rest, the pensioners are important in this election. I would say that, of course, they will have an influence, but we also have the youth, and many of the young people, as I understand, are quite not extreme, but have very clear approach. They are either voting very left or they're voting very right. This is my impression of them. So there we will have more kind of radical votes from that part of the population. And then you have 2.2 of people who are Swedish citizens, but they're registered abroad. I have such friends on the Twitter and also out of Twitter. So when it comes to the last poll, I already told you that the big expectation was that the Sweden Democrats are going to win, that they have the most votes, but still under 30. Social Democrats also under 25. Now they are getting. Let me update us here. I will move it so I can watch it together.
Here it would be interesting to know.
Sorry?
Here it would be interesting to know, Biljana, how many people you think have voted? Because you said 7.5 million could vote.
Yeah, until now, 3 million have voted.
3 million. So we're
3 million votes have been counted.
Okay.
Yes. And 84.2% participation, which means that almost 7 million people voted. That's quite a very, very high number.
So but you're telling only 3.4 million we know the results. So there's a lot of people yet to come.
Yes, yes. Now it's only 3 million, so I can imagine that it's less than half of what we know is happening.
Oh, okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, so now it's 10 o'clock here, and they have counted by now only 3 million votes. And as I said, a lot of the votes are actually going to be counted fully when they come with the pre-votes. I think the pre-votes this year will actually matter. Now you're showing a slide which I thought will be interesting for your viewers in New York and anywhere else in the US. This is the statistics that was not published anywhere in any established media in Sweden. It was done by one Twitter account, which went through all the candidates. This means thousands of people, and checked their names for each person, for each candidate, for each party, for county, municipality, or parliament. They checked their criminal records. It is the person behind it. I don't know who it is, but the account is called Granskning Sverige Praktikanten. I think this was an amazing job. A lot of people were surprised by it. What you see here is the result of what he found. He found 205 verdicts. The verdicts are including. I send you the list, Charles. Remember?
Right. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yes. And you have all kinds of crimes, robbery, weapon crimes, and 3 rapists. So 3 men who have been convicted. Now remember how difficult it is to be convicted for a rape in Sweden. Just remember what I showed you before. 50,000 cases of those. Very few cases, less than 1,000, like 800 cases, are actually getting some kind of a sentence. So this person is one of those few that have actually been in court, and he actually had he actually had 2 years, and he was in prison for 2 years exactly, which is the maximum he could get for one rape.
Is his last name Clinton?
Exactly.
That would explain it.
I have decided that at a certain point, it was around Trump's time, I decided that my only criteria for political choice will be if a person is rapist or not.
It's going to narrow the field, Biljana.
Yeah, I mean, if you really think about it, it was unbelievable that people voted for Clinton. Not only this, twice.
It's
3
true.
times.
Yeah, on top of it, his wife, wanted to be in the highest powers in the world. And I don't understand how people can cope with the idea that you have actually raped someone and you still can hold an office.
More than one person.
So when it comes to the American election or it comes to the Swedish election, my main criteria is what is the safety for our children, and that's it, basically. So now I wanted to, can we go back to the criminal cases, because we didn't really finish that?
Well, but Biljana, I'm going to jump in here and say that we have 21 minutes or so left.
Oh.
So,
well, we have only 21 minutes. We should say that, okay, that's it. I can just tell you that a lot of people with verdicts and criminals are actually running for office, and they are representing each of those parties, particularly many more than these are the years. What the chart is showing you, how many years the candidates had in prison.
Jesus.
That's what numbers are showing you. So if you count the so-called alliance that the globalists want so much, and everybody else here, all their main media and everything want, it's about 56.7 years in prison for the candidates that we are electing right now, tonight.
Wow.
And nobody knows it except the people that actually saw it on Twitter or on Facebook because someone retweeted it. No information about this in the media, no information about this from the parties themselves.
Biljana, after September 11th, I think we should do another show where we can go into some more depth on some of these slides, but just so that we can get to all of your information.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Sorry, yes.
No, don't apologize. It's very interesting. We'll do another episode where we focus on all of this. It's astounding.
Yeah, well, I wanted to show you just the latest statistics on how many Immigrants have gotten residency from the beginning of 2018 until now. And you see the number. You see also where they come from: Syria, Iraq, Iran, Georgia, and when it says stateless, it means that they have no state. We don't know where they come from.
Amazing.
Yes. Well, I'm claiming here, and you can look at it on Twitter. I do talk about it a lot. I don't think that we have journalism at all in Sweden anymore. It is lobbyism. That's it. I'm just showing you today what one of the biggest monopoly called Schibsted did. They are showing the election day picture. It's about the climate, as if this is the absolute biggest issue for Sweden to resolve in the world or in the North Pole. And then the GEP, another newspaper here, Göteborgs-Posten, the main editor, chief editor, is actually telling people that what we want is the alliance. So you could see what I underlined as red. He was actually telling them, and all the advertisement, everything in the newspaper was directed towards the center party, the Bilderberg choice, as I showed her to you, Löf, and the liberals and the moderates. And the Christian Democrats, what they want to win this time. Of course, in this newspaper today, in election day in Sweden, what are they publishing? They're publishing a picture that is showing that Trump cheated on his picture from the inauguration day, and he went and told that an anonymous photographer has told an anonymous person that Trump has called the day of the inauguration and asked them to change the picture. This is the kind of news they bombard people with, and daily. And today, 2 years later after the inauguration, they continue. Anonymous source. Well, how am I going to check this information?
We've got approximately the same thing happening here, so don't feel bad.
Yeah, no, I know. Let's pass this. The feminist. I think that the feminist party will have an epic fail, and I have support by people showing in a vote on Twitter that they prefer a strict migration policy, and they're not interested in racism or anti-racism or feminism.
Wow.
This is the alliance. These are the faces of the alliance. So from the left side to the right side, you have the Christian Democrats, it's a woman, the moderates, it's a man, the center, again a woman, and then the liberals. Now, the woman in the red, this is the choice that the globalists have made for our prime minister. If these parties get enough votes, the same parties that are presenting to us candidates with 56.7 years in prison, keep that in mind. If her party also has some of the gravest criminals, these people are going to lead Sweden.
Wow.
Next. I see here that... what I'm showing you, I have talked about it before, a very strong support for the Center Party and Annie Lööf with organizations such as Expo, which has been supported by the Social Democrats. They are Social Democrat, Communist, or also Left Party organization with newspaper and everything that are basically persecuting and spying on people. They call themselves, say that they are the Swedish Stasi. And
wow.
That's basically what they do.
If I may ask, Biljana, the reason you live in Sweden is why? We'll let you think about that and keep going.
It's the lovely weather, right? It never snows.
I mean, this year has been more like I really felt I have a duty to do something.
Well, thank you.
The easiest thing for me to do is to just leave. That's the easiest thing I can do. I'm not I've lived in all kinds of countries, and particularly, of course, I lived in the States and in Bulgaria. It's not an issue for me to move. That's not the problem. The problem is this right? Can we leave people like this in this situation? Anyway, I wanted to show you the crowd of the Sweden Democrats. They have a good crowd, and I'm very impressed by this crowd because these people have been called everything on the planet. They have been called racist, Nazis, white, disgusting men.
Deplorable?
Deplorable. They are everything. Now they've been called stupid. They are supposed to be the working party, and strange enough, the Social Democrats are calling the workers people, the workers and the Workers' Party, that is the Workers' Party, stupid. I constantly get this, but it's very difficult for them to call me uneducated, to call me uneducated, but they can always call me stupid, idiot, or anything like that, as they actually do. So that's the view of the people that dare to show their faces now after 20 years of constant abuse. I show you now that my intuition before that the left, the woman on the right, is the pre-elected person, and in the end, last night, the final debate was between her and Jimmy Åkesson, the leader of the Sweden Democrats. The reason why it's her is because she is the pre-chosen one, because it has to be a woman. The families definitely want to have a woman, and it has to be the center party. It has to be the globalist choice. And her party is inviting most Islamic sort of participation in the Swedish governance. Yeah, we can go forward. We don't have to go through this, but I think that, and everybody thinks that it's going to be time for coalition discussions after the election. Most of the party have said that they will never talk to the Sweden Democrats. My expectation is that they will have to talk to the Swedish Democrats. But who knows? Maybe the globalist plan will work if they win the election. There was a big scandal also exactly recently, not yesterday, the other day, when again the woman to the left now, the center party left, kind of shouted at the Sweden Democrat speaker as he was speaking in his final debate, and he couldn't really finish his sentences. He was constantly asked, "How could you speak like this? Why are you calling the immigrants not Swedes?" And then the woman on the right that you see on the other side, she was leading the debate in the Swedish state TV, or you might call it public service, but it's basically very much controlled by the government and state channel. And she said that that this public service does not stand by the utterances that the leader of the Sweden Democrats made during the program, which is crazy. Who are they? Are they judges? Are we in a court? How come they are not standing by? They are just journalists. They are there to inform people. They're not there to judge the politicians. So they were heavily criticized, and the Jimmy Åkesson, the leader of the Sweden Democrats, said that he's not going to join the election count tonight at the public service. For the first time, I've never heard this before. This is the first time I hear anything like that. But he decided not to do it because they mistreat him. Now, I see also that in Sweden there is some kind of rage against the fake news, and you see here that most people said it's fine, it's good that the Sweden Democrats are boycotting the state TV public service, who are literally like a communist organization. It's unbelievable what they're doing. We have to have a special program only for them to show you the fake news, the crazy and false news that they are bombarding people with. We can go forward. This is the alternative for Sweden. This is the big news for Sweden, and this is the video I wanted to show. Let's go to the video, because maybe we don't have more time.
Yeah, about 10 minutes.
These are very young people. Look at them. The first conservative party in Sweden. They are under enormous pressure, enormous attack. I don't know how they will survive it, but they are very determined to survive it.
Okay,
We
and
can
I've got
watch,
the video here.
their final, we can
Yeah.
watch their final kind of campaign talk. They had a tour around the country, so this is their last, one of their last sort of talks in public, and it is in a town called Nyköping.
And then, why don't you tell us exactly what's going on? Because I think all the speaking is in Swedish, right?
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Just put on the light because I want to make a point with the sound.
Okay.
Please.
Put
Yeah,
the sound in.
it's
Supposed to, but it
not
will be good
giving
for the
me,
viewers.
it's not functioning properly at the
You
moment.
have this.
I know what I'm supposed to do, but it's just not cooperating. Let's try it again. I'm clicking and it's not doing it. Oop.
Okay, you see what they're doing here. They're showing, this is their campaign. They're showing here the departures, all you people from Afghanistan, Somalia, Iraq, all of you who have committed crimes here in Sweden, we are sending you away. We are going to pay your ticket and please leave this country. This is how they sound. They've done this all around the country.
What is going on with it?
Is
But
it being
it's-
blocked?
It's
Sorry?
not being blocked, it's just acting a little crazy. It's not letting me turn up the sound, and
There you go. But this is a different.
it's a different video. It's,
I wonder if it's being blocked because Biljana's in Sweden.
let's see, here we go. Now it's gonna come back for us.
No, it works. It is this recording has been spreading in all kinds of ways.
I think
so
it's just, you know, we've got,
Here we go.
Vi kommer hjälpa er och ta er hem. Mitt namn är Erik Berglund. Jag är riksdagskandidat för...
I don't know what happened. I think it's
Oh,
just,
yeah.
Sverige.
Can you
Jag har den
move to
stora
this
äran,
record
glädjen och
time
nöjet att få
minutes?
inledningstala på det sista torgmötet innan vi möts i Kungsträdgården imorgon
I think we gotta leave
i
it
vår
be.
vackra huvudstad Stockholm.
Okay. Yeah, it's a pity because you have to see what you're hearing in it. You can stop it now. It's just, you didn't, people can watch it. I have linked it. Yeah, here. You see what's going on?
En stad som jag själv har kopplingar till. Jag har familj här.
What are we looking at?
This is a reaction basically saying screw you, giving them the finger.
Den behöver bara titta på vår livesändning så förstår man precis
It became worse.
det är. Svenskarna har tröttnat på gästerna som stannat kvar längre än de är välkomna. Och gästerna verkar trötta på Sverige också. Det är bara att ta sig hem. Det finns gott om plats i hela världen. Men Sverige är inte bara överfullt. Det svämmar över. Och som William Hane, vår tidigare partiledare, brukar säga, det räcker inte med att stoppa inflödet.
You can stop it
Det
now.
är dags att skapa ett ordentligt utflöde. Och när vi har öst ut allt vatten som inte ska vara i vårt fartyg.
Okay, so basically this guy is saying they're not really interested in having all this mass immigration, and the immigrants are giving them the bird.
Yes, the present immigrants are giving them the finger, but have in mind that what they are saying, and also during their campaign, is they're saying we don't want alien rapists in this country. And right in front of them, in front of their face, you have these guys showing the middle finger. And
They
very
want
aggressively,
alien rapists.
They
those
are the
guys.
alien rapists.
they came forward. I don't know if these particular people are, but we are dealing with this. This is a real problem in Sweden. There are people that are committing suicide due to these rapes, and to have this arrogance, this audacity, this aggression to meet the local population and show the middle finger while they're saying that we cannot live like this anymore. This I find astonishing. Astonishing aggression, astonishing irresponsibility, astonishing inhumanity.
Indeed.
And they afterwards were throwing stones at the speakers of the party Alternative for Sweden. So Alternative for Sweden, also what you see here is that the police is supposed to remove immediately, physically remove the people that are disturbing the election speakers. So during election, the speakers of each party with the mandate had the right to speak, to be heard. And if you want to scream and so on, you can do it when they're silent, but not when they talk. Do you see something like this happening here? Not at all. The police is not able to stop this. I don't know if they don't want to stop it or they are instructed not to stop it, but they're not stopping it. So what is going on here is really a violation of the election procedure in Sweden. And what you also see, and I wanted to show you, is that the other party leaders are standing there. And the Sweden Democrats, the party that has been usually called racist, and everybody was screaming at them, now we're just sitting and nobody paid attention to them. Yep. Although they have very similar policy when it comes to immigration. Forget about this. This party was stopped from having a campaign and a meeting in Stockholm. This is the person who decided to do it. They called them Nazis, and they tried to stop them from talking in Stockholm. They did it really, but they did their meeting. But they were confronted with the Stockholm city. The woman who decided it is, of course, from Social Democrats. The leader of the Alternative for Sweden is this person. And somehow I feel that the strangest thing that would happen is that he will get into the parliament. This will be, I think that this might happen because of the passion of their supporters. And this is a very funny picture of him, and the bulldogs are the other guys that are supporting him.
So Biljana, if I could just jump in here, we have to end the broadcast in 2 minutes or so. So,
okay.
We got one more slide.
It's already done. This is what I wish to Sweden, and this is the girl that was cut in 2 pieces in Stockholm last year.
Oh my God!
By the Islamic radical terrorists, and she was a beautiful girl. I can't imagine what it is to lose a child. I really feel for the parents. It must be absolutely devastating. I don't want this to happen again. And the reason why I made these efforts is to stop anything like that happening again, or girls like her to be raped. And I can't even say the word. Looking at her and say the word is so disturbing for me. So what I can just update you before you go, as you're rushing. Let me update here. I'm looking at some sites and try not to. 4 million 4 million votes have been counted. You can actually, if you have time or an opportunity, you can actually show this to the viewers. They can go to this site. Can I send it to you?
I think you sent it to me in Skype, which is difficult for me to access while we're on. But I've
yes, so you can people can watch it there. You can, if you can put it up, and I will put it on Twitter. You can see it on my Twitter account. I will show it to people, and they can read now. They can read a little bit of the Swedish, but they can see the numbers. And by now, 4.5 million votes have been counted. But what I don't see is any update of the actual results. So it shows me that the votes are counted, but it's not showing me any changes in the the only change that I see here is that Sweden Democrats are losing. Now they have 17%, 7.7. The moderates have 19.6. The Social Democrats have 28.1. The Center Party has 8.7. The leftist party, say communists, 8.1. The Christian Democrats have 6.4. The Liberals have 5.5. And actually, this is very interesting result. We see that the Green Party has 4.4, which means that they're coming into Parliament.
Good, Biljana. Well, many thanks. I think we should do a follow-up show to this if you're interested, Biljana. Maybe Wednesday of this week, or if that's soon enough, or. I think Wednesday we should do it either on Wednesday or on Thursday, because you have a show on Wednesday, right?
Will they have the results by Wednesday?
Yes, they will have the results by Wednesday.
Yeah, that would be good.
Yeah. So maybe if you want to have the finals, of course they will be published everywhere, and it won't be a secret. But we can discuss it still. In any case, it will be chaos in the parliament one or another way.
Good, Biljana. Well, many thanks. Thanks for all this time and hard work, and we look forward to catching up again on Wednesday.
Wonderful.
Thank you very much for support, for interest, for loving us, and thank you to my friends from Sweden who helped me.
And of course, people who aren't yet following Biljana on Twitter, you can go there and find her. Showing her Twitter page right now. She is B. Martinovsky on Twitter, and make sure you get the spelling correct so people can see that right there. Biljana, thank you so much. It's always such a pleasure to have you on, and this is a topic I think we need to look at with great interest, because a lot of people have said that what's going on in Sweden is the sort of beta test for the globalists' plan for the world.
Yes, I mean, they are succeeding by now. Look at Macron. Look at Merkel.
Very good. Well, have a good night there in Sweden, and we look forward to a positive outcome in the election.
Thank you.
Thank you, Biljana.
Bye-bye. Well, Charles, that's pretty much it. Was there anything else that you wanted?
No, I think we should let our viewers attend to their business. And
very good. I want to thank everybody who's been watching with us, and remind everyone that they can sponsor Crowdsource the Truth by going to patreon.com/Crowdsource the Truth. We've got a whole slew of new shows that are only on Patreon, and we're going to have a lot of exciting guests. September 11th, of course, is this Tuesday. 17 years since those horrendous attacks changed the world as we know it. Charles, thank you so much for that presentation today. These two gentlemen are enemies of the deep state, and that puts them right in the crosshairs. I want to thank everybody for watching and wish everyone out there a happy Rosh Hashanah.